Hello everyone, my name is Lorthorn and welcome to How to Bewitchment for Minecraft version 1.12.2. This is the 0.0.22.12 release of the mod. So now that's all out of the way, let's get to it. So a quick overview of what we're going to cover here is all the basics of the mod, so everything you need to do to get started in this mod. And we will cover the more advanced stuff in another video. Alright then, to start off with, let's talk about the very first resources you need to get. You'll want to find, in the world, these types of trees. So there's 3 different trees you'll mainly want to find. And they can be found out and about in the world. We've got the juniper wood, cypress, and back here, elderwood. Elderwood for starting game is the most important. Its little saplings look like this, the trees look like this. They're right beautiful little things. Actually one of my favorite parts of this mod. Anyways, find yourself one of those, cut it down, get the saplings, plant them around your base. That's a good starting point for the Bewitchment mod. Next you want to find yourself some salt. It's quite important, just go mine for it. It's usually around the top layers of the world. There's a few other resources you can mine this mod, like silver ore, opals, granite ore, and amethyst ore. But those aren't really important until later. So just get yourself some salt. And I'll give you this nice salt stuff here, and that's quite important to this mod. Before or after that though, get yourself a hoe and go bash some grass. So this mod adds a little thing to the hoe, where when you hit grass with it, it breaks huge amounts of grass. So you can quickly harvest grass in large swaths and harvest a whole bunch of seeds. You want to go around like a madman, smashing all the grass you can, and it'll give you a whole bunch of different seeds for this mod, like belladonna, contium, normal seeds, hellebora, and if there's other mods, well, you'll get those seeds. But those are important. So yeah, garlic seeds, a whole bunch of different seeds this mod gives you. You want to take these seeds, go back home, and plant them in some hoed soil, and you'll start growing plants. Most important plants to get are the mandrake root and the hellebora. These are what gets you started in the mod. Okay, from there, go and build yourself a Book of Shadows. So, very simple little recipe here. Put it in a crafting table or just your inventory and make it. And then you get the Book of Shadows. The Book of Shadows is your guidebook to their whole mod. So, you can actually stop watching this video here and you'll have all the knowledge you need to know to proceed with this mod because you've gotten yourself the Book of Shadows, which is basically the tutorial to this mod contained in a nice little flavorful book. But if you're still here because you wish to learn more via video format, let's continue then. Next thing you want to build yourself is an unfired jar. You get it with some clay, pop that clay into a crafting table, get yourself a jar, then fire that jar in any sort of oven, and it'll give you an empty jar. So with that jar, the salt and the elderwood you've gotten yourself, you can make yourself an altar. Now here I put down an obsidian altar, which is actually wrong. There'd usually be obsidian here. The altar that would create would be, of course, the stone altar, which looks like this. Now, doing one of these will get you 3 altar stone. You need 6 altar stone total to make an altar, so you'll have to do this recipe twice. Then, once you have the altars all laid out in a pattern like this, a 2x3, pop any colored carpet on top of them, and it will complete the altar. Now, altar power is needed for absolutely everything in this mod. If you want to brew potions, distill things, see into the future, weave silks, cast ritual spells, all of that requires the altar. In fact, one of the few things in this mod that doesn't require the altar is the witch's oven, but we'll get to that later. So yeah, everything, absolutely everything requires altar power, so make sure your altar has power. Now, how do you actually power your altar? Well, altars are powered by nature around them and putting fancy bits and bobs on top of them. So when putting nature around the altar, it usually likes about 1 or 2 of every type of plant. I think the maximum is about 3 of every plant. And it's any plant from any mod as long as that plant has a plant tag in its mod directory. So these 3 grass here, that'll give power to the altar. These 3 dandelions, power to the altar. These blue orchids, power to the altar. The trees, these oaks, power to the altar. All of these plants around here are giving power to the altar. I'm not exactly certain on the range of which it draws power, but if you're having troubles fitting stuff in, know that you can put dirt above the altar if you like, and plant more trees and plants on that dirt above the altar, and it will take that power, because it draws power in a bubble around the altar. So above, below, around, that'll get you power to the altar. Of course, that's not the only thing that gives power to the altar. There's also power multipliers for charge rate, and there is just power boosters. And those are found in 4 different kinds of objects. These are cups, which are things like potted plants, goblets, glass bottles, and filled goblets. Then we have swords, which are, of course, swords, silver swords, anthems, and bowlines, all fill in the swords category. Wands are candles, torches, and end rods. And these things will have different tiers of power. So a torch will give you only so much, where end rod is a much better item. And then we have the final thing, which is pentacles, which contains monster heads, precious gems, skulls, and the pentacle itself. So you place these 4 things onto your altar, and they will grant it more power and multipliers here. There is a few super items you can put on them, I believe, like a nether star, but that might not be the case anymore. So anyways, get the power multipliers, and then just plant lots and lots and lots of plants around your altar. As many as you can. This includes crops and things by the water, pumpkins, anything that's a plant. So plant your wheat by it, plant your bewitchment plants by it, plant trees, everything. If it's other mods, if you have botania, plant botania flowers around it. Just as many plants and variations as you can. But make sure that's only 1 or 2 or 3 plants around the altar of each kind. Right, now we will move on to the cauldron. So the cauldron, another simple recipe, although this one actually does require silver, so you'll have to do a little bit of extra mining for it. But then get yourself some iron, and you can make yourself the witch's cauldron. Now for any witch's cauldron to work, it has to have a heat source. Any heat source will do: lava, fire, burning a coal block, or infinite flame with a nether block. Just has to have heat underneath it. And then you fill it with water, so make sure you have a water source nearby, and then it will start boiling after a few seconds. Of course, it will need power to be operable, so make sure it is close enough to your altar for it to actually bubble. Then, you can make brews and various other things with this altar. To do any brew, you need to first throw in mandrake root. This will then make it possible for you to do brews, and I have a whole video covering the brews. It's a little out of date, but if you want to look more in depth into the brews, you can go to that video. Then throw in whatever other thing you want with this to make the brew. So let's say an apple, if we want to make a health potion, and it'll make this a lovely red color. Then you can scoop that up with normal bottles, and that will make witch's brew, and it'll be instant health witch's brew. And if you just run out of bottles or you don't want to scoop any more up, chuck in some wood ash, and that will clear out the cauldron, and then you can brew your next potion. Now we will move on to the witch's oven. Witch's oven is just purely made of iron. This is a useful little tool which basically makes all of your stuff. Well, not all of the stuff, but a lot of it. It is one of the main ways you get wood ash. Simply throw a plant in there and then some plants on top, and it'll burn down, and it'll give you charcoal at the top and wood ash down here. It's a very nice little, perk, so to say. But also, remember those clay jars? Well, put some of those clay jars down here in the empty jar slot. And then go grab yourself basically any other sapling in the game and slap it up top here. And that will start cooking down into a whole bunch of different, well, I'm not exactly sure what to call them, these little jars full of stuff. It'll give you ash up here, and it will give you droplets of wisdom, otherworldly tears. You can get whole bunches of stuff from this, and these are basically bread and butter of crafting in this mod. So you just go find those thingamadiggies, and you can get yourself a crafting away. Of course, you will need to do a lot of exploring and planting, so I recommend whenever you harvest a new plant, make sure you get seeds or saplings so you can bring them home, so you don't have to go tramping about the world to find it again. Next, we move on to chalk. So, there is the basic chalk, which is made with birch soul. Birch soul is using our witch's oven, and you get birch soul from it. So, already the oven is useful to you. Then you put down some ash, you get some stone, and bam, you get chalk. And ritual chalk is how you do ritual magic. But before you can do any ritual magic, you need the special golden chalk, the focal chalk. To get focal chalk, you need to get yourself a golden nugget, some liquid witchcraft, and some normal ritual chalk. To get the liquid witchcraft, you will need to throw into your witch's oven a mandrake root, and that will give you the liquid witchcraft, if you have a jar in place, usually. Anyhows, then you take all these things, and you chuck them into a cauldron. So, chalk first, that'll start the ritual. Then, everything else you need, and bam, you got yourself some focal chalk. Now, chalk can be a little bit expensive, as well as other ingredients. So, be cautious before you make anything, and just chuck in a little bit of wood ash just to clear out the cauldron. And then proceed with your ritual, just so you don't get any gross mixed up things like a spider fell in there or something and gubbins up your cauldron. Because if you are in survival mode, the oven will actually do damage. And things can die in there, and then they will taint the cauldron by having their little meaty bits fall in. Once you have your focus chalk and your basic chalk, you can get cracking to the most basic of rituals. So find a place near your altar. I usually like to build a building below my altar, personally. And then, in the center of that area, put down some focus chalk. Then around in a circle, place the rest of the chalk. So here we have some white ritual chalk, and it starts being 2 distance away and 3 wide. Very easy way to remember it, actually, is just count the 2 out. So 2 empty spaces, then put down 3. 1, 2, 3. And then you put 1 coming off it, and then you put down 3 again. Then the next level out is 1 space, and it's 5 wide. And then you can go over here and go 1 space out, 5 wide, 1 space out, 5 wide, so on. And then you just fill in the spaces in between. Final layer is 1 space out, 7 wide. Then 3 little spaces connected to the next one. And then you got yourself some rituals. These will only do the most rudimentary of rituals though, and they do take a lot of power. All the rituals can be found in the Book of Shadows. Simply go to Circle Rites, and you can find yourself some rituals. Let's briefly cover how to do a ritual. So, simple ritual, really easy to do, is the Ritual of Purification. This requires 200 altar power, 2 white sage, 2 salt, and 4 dirt. So we grab the dirt, salt, and white sage, and you right-click on the center of the ritual, and put all the ingredients in. Then, with an empty hand, click on it, and you'll start the ritual. It'll complete relatively quickly, if you have the power, and you'll get the result. There's a whole bunch of different rituals, from changing biomes and summoning hell gates, but right now, this is just the basics you need to know. Now next is the phasing chalk. This is for teleportation, changing rituals, summoning creatures, changing biomes, all that sort of good stuff. It requires you to go to hell to get some glowstone dust, and it will require some dimensional sand, which is actually really expensive stuff. Dimensional sand requires you to either cook Eyes of Ender, Shulker shells, or chorus fruit. So this is definitely a late game ritual chalk. And again, you just throw it in the oven and it will cook up your chorus fruit and your dimensional sand. Fiery chalk is actually easier to get than dimensional chalk. Come to think of it, the phasing stuff. It just requires you to go to the nether. And it is some blaze powder and netherrack. Again, you have to put it in the cauldron, but once you've done that, it is very straightforward. Fiery chalk is for doing curses, hells, incantations, and all that fun stuff. Also summoning demons. Now, when wanting to change up chalks, there is several ways to do it. One of the straightforward ways is actually just to go around and manually scribble over. And it's got a nice feature where any sort of chalk can actually cover another kind of chalk, because it would take far too long to break and replace all the chalk. But even placing it manually takes quite a bit of while, especially on the outer ring. So there is a ritual to change up the chalk layout. Open up the good old Book of Shadows, and it is the ritual of circle drawing. So, some clay will change the middle ring, clay and wood ash will change the outer ring, 2 clay, 2 wood ash will change the outmost ring. So it's very simple, just grab yourself some clay, pop it into the circle, and then whatever type of chalk you want to replace, put into your offhand, then begin the ritual, and bam, it will replace the whole circle. And you just follow the instructions in the Book of Shadow to change all the other ones. Let's move on to some tools. So, we have the bowline and the anthem. Both can be made in the crafting table, and they require silver and any sort of gem. It can be an emerald, lapis lazuli, diamond, or the new gems added by Bewitchment. But I'll make you these items. The anthem is for harvesting special items from creatures. Let's say you kill a horse with the anthem. This will give you the new unique item of Horse's Hoof. The bowline is for harvesting items from the Bewitchment mod creatures. So you got a raven, it'll drop its feathers for you. Got owl, it'll drop that. So you use it basically as a pacifist way to harvest special items from the unique Bewitchment mobs. It can also be used cutting into dragon blood trees. You simply cut one of the blocks in a dragon resin tree, and it'll start popping out dragon resin. Now, dragon resin is a unique tree that is used for several other things in this mod. It's quite important, actually, to get when you want some later, stronger things. And it can only be gotten on alchemists, and you have to trade for them. So a villager that looks like this, is open to trade with him. Sometimes the tree, but it's not always guaranteed. But just find yourself the right alchemist or his house, and hopefully he will have a sapling for you to use. They might also spawn in the wild, I'm not certain about that. It is a bit of a shame that it's random if they'll drop or not, so you will have to search through probably a few villages. Now that we know how to get resin in some way or another, we can move on to the brazier. Brazier is a rather unique item that requires you to have quite a bit of silver and iron to make, as well as some otherworldly tiers, which are very expensive and require the distillery to work with. Then put into it the ingredients as depicted by the incense book. So if we want to do a ritual of vitality, then we put in the vitality things. Then you light up the brazier, get nice and smoking, sleep in your lovely bed, and it should buff you with vitality. Although it doesn't seem to always work, which is a bit of a shame. Anyways, we talked about the distillery, so let's move on to that little beauty. So that will require glass, opal, and silver. Put those into the crafting table, and you'll make this cool little machine. Then you put in all the ingredients that you want into the distillery, and you charge it with blaze powder. It's a lot like an alchemist stand for potion making, but instead this distills and makes you more advanced and complicated things. And this too will require altar power. Now that you know how to do some distilling, let's get on to fashion and clothes. So, to get any sort of the witching clothes, or basically anything at all, clothing related, you need to get yourself a spinning wheel. Spinning wheel, straightforward, does require spruce heart, but that just requires spruce sapling in the witch's oven. And then you can get yourself a spinning wheel. It too, like everything else, as I've said before, time and time again, requires power. But then, once it has its power, take yourself a little bit of string, some liquid witchcraft, put it into this baby, and it should start spinning itself away automatically. And once it's done, you've got yourself some lovely, lovely witch's stitching thread. Or just witch's stitching, as it is called. And this is the stitching used for all sorts of clothes and various other things. As you can see, it's how you make your witch's robes. And hat, even, if you want to go that far. This lovely little spinning device can do more than just witch's stitchings, though. It can also make you some golden thread, and the very fancy and illustrious spirit string, which is useful in many different other things, like poppets, and that's it, because it actually has no any other uses besides making poppets. Golden thread, only use is to combine with other threads. So you can make yourself some diabolical veins, pure fragments, spirit string, a besmirching hat, besmirched pants, robes, and besmirched fleece. Now let's talk about besmirched stuff briefly. So to make yourself some besmirched clothing, you will need to take an ordinary witch's hat, golden thread, diabolical thread, which, as we saw, is made with heart, fiery unguent, all this stuff here. And you'll need to get yourself some Signanthian cloth. Now Signanthian cloth is also made in the spinning wheel with a bottle of blood, some black wool, and a diabolical vein. You can get a bottle of blood through distilling a heart or adder's tongue. I think there's also a way to stab your thumb and get it, but that's never worked for me. You can also use dog tongues and get some slime if you want blood, but that's a little gross. Then, you simply combine all these things together in the spinning wheel, and you'll get yourself a besmirching hat. In fact, let's do that now. So we've got ourselves the golden thread, and we will get ourselves the stinging cloth, diabolical vein, and witch's hat. We'll put all these into here, and it should craft us up a new besmirched hat. And isn't that just fashionable? Lovely stuff. Right, next we'll cover the sigils. So, go and get yourself some of this lovely bloodstone resin and liquid witchcraft. Then, put them together in this pattern here with a few other blocks, and you will get yourself the sigil table. Now the sigil table is rather terrifying. You put this thing down, and you look inside, and oh my goodness, that is a lot of panels to craft with. But fear not, it's actually a lot simpler than you think. Every single recipe will have this pattern around the edges of dragon blood resin and paper, always in this pattern. Then you only have to worry about these here, the little tips, and then it's just a normal crafting recipe, as you can see here. And it'll always follow this pattern of this item being in a shape like this, up top, then everything surrounding a central little bit. So we have the ectoplasm surrounding a toe frog. Get that all together, and that will craft you a Sigil of Shrieking. Place the sigil down, and it will take effect on anyone who walks over it who is an enemy. Now you can choose who to whitelist and who to blacklist from the sigil using Piglaw. And then you will be affected by whatever the sigil does. In this case, it creates horrible shrieking whenever you step near it or on it. Now the sigil of binding should apply extremely unpleasant slow if you are affected by it. So it is honestly best to keep yourself not affected by these things, because they are quite awful. Whew! Now sigils can be applied to any dragon blood chest, door, or even trapdoor. So you can add these things as your security. So you can go, oh, I'll just put a Sigil of Shrieking onto my door. So when some poor idiot who is not me walks through it, they will get screamed at. Tag locking the doors doesn't really seem to work, though, I've found. Which is a bit of a shame. But, hey, that's just the way it goes. Let's briefly talk about the goblet. So, you make the goblet very simply with iron nuggets. And then you can put it on your altar. But to power it up, you are going to need a little bit more than just iron nuggets. You will need yourself some redstone, some gas tiers, some cloudy liquid, a goblet, and a cauldron. Take these items over to a working, bubbling, powered cauldron, chuck them in, and you will get yourself a nice filled goblet. So if you want to know how to fill a goblet, that's how. You just need enough altar power, and you can fill it up, and you can place it on your altar, and it will make your altar even more powerful. Cheers to you. Now, as you may or may not know, Bewitchment adds a myriad of animals. And if you want these furry friends as your furry companions, or feathered, actually none of them are furry, they're mostly scaled and feathered. Anyways, if you want these friends as companions, you will need to tame them. To tame the owl, take some raw rabbit and give it to him until he loves you. And boom, you got yourself some owls. And you can tell them to follow you or not. To get yourself a tamed raven, give him something shiny, like a gold nugget or a silver nugget, and he'll love you forever. If you want yourself a slithering snake, give him some small animals, like a rabbit. He'll love it, and then you'll have yourself a snake friend, and he will curl up and follow you about, and you'll have a very deadly companion who will bite things for you. But beware, a snake's bite is a very nasty poison. Snakes also can have their venom milked from them, so to say, which is snake venom. And the term just comes from you squeezing their venom glands and getting it from their teeth. Don't think about anything else, please. If you want a toad, feed him some bug eyes. That's what gets them going. They like invertebrates, and the only invertebrates I know of are spiders. So give them spider's eyes or fermented spider eyes, and then you get yourself a little froggy friend. And he will tell you which day it is, my dudes. Now, a toad also, I believe, makes it so you can make higher level brews. Although I may be wrong on that count. But I think he may be one of the things that helps you to get them high level brews. Now let's cover one of the most important and useful items in the game. The Grimoire magia. This book is gotten via ritual, requiring a copious amount of leather, liquid witchcraft, a fancy opal, and enough pages to make a book. Put these items into your magic circle in any order. Make sure to have at least one ring of white chalk, and it will start the rite of knowledge. And boom, you will get yourself the Grimoire Magi. So this little book here is basically a magic battery So when you hold it near an altar, or you put it on an altar, it will start to charge the book, and it will fill it with altar power. Then you can complete rituals without the need to have an altar around. So you can go out, draw yourself a magic circle, use the Grimoire magia, and it will do the altar powering for you. Also, I have found a nice little side bonus, is if you have a very weak altar and you want to do a ritual that requires, let's say, 1,000 power, which is the absolute maximum power this book can hold, then charge up the book, which only costs 150 power to get, and then you can do mid-tier rituals using the book as a power source. Yes, it'll be a lot slower, but you've got yourself like an extra battery. And it can also just help you with those little hurdles of you needing 2,000 power and you've only got a 1,000 power altar. Then you have a 1,000 power altar and a 1,000 power book. So it is a very useful item. And its other biggest use is for letting you fly on magic broomsticks. So a broomstick is a rather useless item, but it can be made far more useful when you combine it with certain items. This being flying ointment and the resources of any of the bewitchment trees. So it could be an elderwood log or a juniper leaf, but it all has to be the same type. So right now we're using cypress. And then you put one of their saplings into the witch's oven, and so you get the oven mix here, Ebbs of Death. And finally, you need yourself some flying ointment, which is just a little bit of collection to do. Requires towel, belladonna, poppy, and essentium. Then you get all this together, and you put it into a ritual circle of purple being on the outermost reaches, white being on the middle. You put it all into here, and you'll get the rite of the rising twig. Now, if you want to get a broomstick at low levels, get yourself the basic white chalks, then go and kill yourself an Enderman, attach some of the stuff to get the Eye of Ender, and you can make one purple chalk. And one purple chalk is actually enough to make the outside circle, but you get no redos. So I recommend doing it in white first, then doing the ritual to get the outer ring, and that will be enough to get you the purple circle, which will give you your magic broom. Now the brooms are these lovely little vehicles which will fly, but they require power. And so you will need the Grimoire of Gaia on you to actually make them fly. If not, you'll be able to fly away from your altar for a short bit, and then the broom will no longer work. But while you have the lovely little thing, you can fly. Press shift to dismount, and if you want to go down, stop holding space and it will drift down. Do not hold shift to go down. Often a mistake, it will just make you fall to your death. So just let go, and it flies around, steers lovely, but you will need your happy little Grimoire to fly. Now, if you want to be a nasty git and hurt your friend's feelings, or you want to protect yourself, you can get yourself some poppets. Poppets are made with, hey, spirit string, that stuff I talked about earlier, and a bone needle, get that with some bone and flint, Spanish moss, this stuff can be found on trees, in swamps, and leather. Then, put in crafting table, and you got yourself a poppet. Poppets can then be crafted into all sorts of things to do sorts of stuff for you, and I'll go into that in more detail in the next video of this installment in the more advanced bewitchment stuff. But for now, you just got yourself this cute little doll, and feel free to explore it yourself. Moving on to the second to last thing, we've got ourselves the crystal ball. Crystal ball requires a kind of complicated ritual of one layer of white and one layer of purple, so you will need to get yourself some more of that dimensional sand. Then you'll need a droplet of wisdom and a whole lot of nether quartz. But once you got all those together into a ritual circle, and you got yourself a good amount of power, you can get a crystal ball. Now, a crystal ball tells you your fortune, sort of. So it has told me I will stumble upon a good deal. So I suspect the next time I trade with a villager, he'll give me some pretty sick deals. Possibly. I actually really have no idea what they mean. There's a whole bunch of different fortunes with a whole bunch of different effects. And it will just make things happen. This could also refer to doing deals with devils, I don't know. There is a secondary use besides these cool little fortunes, which are basically self-fulfilling prophecies, which is you can take a tag lock and you can click on your orb. I have a tag lock of myself, but you can tag lock a friend, and it'll tell you something about them. So I have slayed 8 monsters. I have some loyal companions, referring to my pets. I have no magic ailments, so I'm not cursed. I have rather mundane protection, so you can know, hey, I can get this guy with a curse. I can't quite figure out what's in the crystal ball. So it basically just gives you some information about them. So it's kind of a cool little information thingy. It doesn't quite let you spy on them just yet, but it gives you information. It's not like the old Bewitchment, as far as I know, which lets you look at them. Have to do some experiments and tests later. Very well. Last but not least, we have the Codex Infernius. To get yourself a Codex Infernius, you have to go to the Nether. So, step into your nearest Nether portal, find yourself a Nether brick fortress, open up the nearest chest, and you just might find yourself a Codex Infernalis. Take this thing, and it will teach you all about the nasty miseries you can inflict on people. It has information about hell and summoning its firstborn. It tells you about transformations, which aren't in the game yet. It covers curses, the demonic gears, devilish oddities, and the higher and lower powers of hell. It also has all these things. If you can decipher them, let me know what the decipherment means. Yeah, there's actually like a whole bunch of weird codes in here, so take them as you will. Like the expletive Father Heron, well, it talks about him. Whole bunch of stuff, really. Feel free to explore it. I will cover this in depth later. And as a final to last note, there are still no vampires in this mod. There are now werewolves in Bewitchment, but you cannot become a werewolf. These are mobs that will spawn in the Dark Forest and they will wreck you. Silver weapons are effective against them, and these things love to kill sheep and cattle, even chickens if they can get their grubby little paws on them. They are big, nasty bullies. There's also a few new spawns in the world. These were here before, these lovely wicker men, but now they got horses in them, and sometimes, if you're lucky, you might find a friend in top of them. Now it is usually a villager, but if you have the utmost luck, sometimes you'll get a cat up there with a special name. And that is the basics of Bewitchment. So I hope you learned something, and I will catch you in the next video, which will be about all the advanced stuff in Bewitchment. So I hope to see you there, or I hope you see me there anyways, and I will be there next time. Goodbye.